Hello and welcome back. In this session, we're going to talk about freezing and deactivating users, what that means, what it does, and when to use each one. When it comes to removing access for your Salesforce org from users, you have two options. You can either freeze them or you can deactivate them. First, we're going to cover freezing users and then we'll talk about deactivating users. So when you freeze a user, you lock them out of the org, meaning that they can't log in. However, they still consume a Salesforce license, meaning that you can't use that license for another user. You should freeze a user when you need to remove access to the org from them, but you still need to carry out maintenance before you fully deactivate them. An example of this would be if they were included in automation rules. You'd need to reconfigure the automation rules to ensure that there is cover for that user. So let's head into Salesforce and take a closer look. So here we are in Salesforce, and we're just going to head to the gear icon. We're just going to open up Setup, and we're just going to bring up our users list view just by searching users. From here, we'll open up the list view, and then you can see we have a list of all of our users, and we're just going to look at Steve Smith again. So if we wanted to freeze Steve Smith, all we need to do is hit that freeze button. And then once he's been frozen, you can see that that freeze button has now changed to an unfreeze button. So again, if I just hit unfreeze, you'll see that user is now able to log back into Salesforce. So let's just talk through a business use case just to make sure we understand freezing a user. So DaveJMassey.com is an international coaching and consulting company, and a user is leaving the company. However, they're involved in a number of automations and workflows which need to be reconfigured. The user should not be able to access Salesforce for security reasons. So in this case, all we would do is just freeze the user, and the reason we're going to freeze them is because they are involved in a number of automations and workflows, and if we try and deactivate a user who's involved in these, then it can cause issues. So now that we've covered freezing a user, let's have a look at deactivating users. You should deactivate users when they should no longer have access to the Salesforce org. However, sometimes this isn't possible. For example, when the user is the only user for a workflow email, you'll need to remove them from that list. In that case, that's where you would then freeze the user first, carry out the maintenance, and then deactivate them. And to deactivate a user, it's really simple. So let's just head into Salesforce and we'll just cover that now. So here we are on Steve Smith's record again, and what we're going to do here is deactivate him. So to do that, we just hit edit, and then we just simply uncheck the active button. You'll see we're going to get told here about deactivating users. So we just click OK, we hit save, and that user has now been deactivated. And because he's been deactivated, the license is then allowed to be reassigned to a new user. So let's just talk about a business use case to make sure we understand about deactivating users as well. So in this case, a user is leaving the company and their access needs to be revoked, and they're not involved in any automations or workflows. So that means we don't have to freeze them. We can just go straight in, uncheck that active checkbox, and they'll be deactivated. So just to cover that checkbox again, if we hit edit here, you can see we have active on the right hand side. So at the moment that's unchecked, meaning that the user is deactivated. But if we check it, they're active. But if we uncheck it, we then make them deactivated, which you can see there. So let's have a quick recap about freezing and deactivating users. There are two ways to remove org access from users. One is to freeze them and the other is to deactivate them. You would freeze a user when they need to be locked out of the org, but maintenance still needs to be carried out just to make sure that automations, etc. still carry on as they should. When you freeze a user, you still consume a Salesforce license, so that's really important to understand. You would deactivate a user when the user's access to the Salesforce org should be removed. However, deactivating a user is not possible if the user is the only user for workflow emails. When you deactivate a user, the Salesforce license is then available to reassigned,